She was on the floor of the most expensive mall in Seoul, blood running down her arm, Christmas ornaments shattered around her like broken promises, and the man standing over her had absolutely no idea he had just made the worst mistake of his entire life. He didn't know about the penthouse she'd left that morning. He didn't know about the black card in her purse with no ceiling on it. He didn't know about the diamond on her finger hidden beneath her glove, or the name that was now legally attached to hers. A name that made politicians lower their voices in restaurants and grown men step out of elevators before their floor. He just saw the woman he'd thrown away 3 years ago, the one he'd left homeless and pregnant and starving with $17 and a parking lot. What he didn't see was what she had become. And in approximately 9 minutes, when a motorcade of black SUVs screeched into the parking garage of Gangnam Luxury Mall, Marcus Delaney was going to receive a very expensive education in consequences. But right now, in this moment, he still thought she was nothing. He was wrong about that. He had always been wrong about that. Her name was Jade Carter, and she had risen from places darker than Marcus Delaney could dream about in his sleep. 3 years ago, Jade was the kind of woman who apologized for taking up too much space. She worked 2 jobs, waitressing until midnight and tutoring on weekends, to keep a roof over their heads while Marcus chased investment deals that never materialized and called it ambition. She paid his car note, she covered the rent every single month. She bought his suits for client meetings and told herself it was temporary, that real love meant showing up for someone when they were still becoming who they were going to be. She believed that for 3 years. Then she got pregnant. She was 4 months along when she painted the nursery yellow. She bought little shoes, the tiny kind that could fit inside a coat pocket, and lined them up on the dresser beside a stuffed bear with a bow tie. She stood in that room alone with both hands pressed to her stomach, whispering promises to someone she hadn't met yet, and she was so happy she didn't know what to do with it. She came home 3 weeks later to an empty apartment, not just empty of Marcus, empty of everything. The television, the savings, the jewelry her grandmother had left her. The baby shoes were gone too, and she spent a long time afterward trying to understand why he would take those. The note on the kitchen counter said she was a desperate woman who had tried to trap a man with a child, and he wanted better than a life like that. He signed it with just the letter M, like she wasn't worth the rest of his name. She filed a police report. They called it a civil matter. She called her mother. Voicemail. She sat in her car in a parking lot in Charlotte, North Carolina, counted the $17 in her wallet, and made a decision. She didn't know yet how she was going to survive. She just decided that she was going to. For 3 weeks, she slept in that car, eating gas station food when she could afford it and skipping meals when she couldn't. She applied for jobs on a phone she was terrified would be cut off any day. She told no one how bad it was because the shame of it felt like a second layer of skin she couldn't get underneath. Then one morning she woke up and the world was wrong. There was blood. Too much of it. She drove herself to the hospital shaking so hard she ran 2 red lights, and the doctor who came to see her in the charity ward was kind enough to hold her hand while he told her the baby was gone. She was alone for that too. Something shifted in her that night. Something that had been soft and accommodating went hard and permanent, and she made a second decision. That Marcus Delaney had taken the last thing he would ever take from her. She spent the next 2 years rebuilding herself the way you rebuild after a natural disaster, slowly, stubbornly, with no guarantee anything would hold. She saved every dollar that didn't go towards survival. She applied for an English teaching position in Seoul, South Korea, because she needed to put an ocean between herself and Charlotte. She got the position. She packed 1 suitcase and she did not look back. She did not expect to fall in love in Seoul. She especially did not expect to fall in love with a man like Kang Soo-hyun. Before we go any further into Jade and Soo-hyun's story, I need to stop right here and ask you something. If you have been watching this channel and you have not subscribed yet, please do it right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications, and become part of this City of Afro-Korean Tales family. Because the stories we tell here, the love, the fire, the redemption, you do not want to miss a single one. Now let's get back to Jade. Because things are about to get very intense. The morning everything came apart started the way most of their mornings did, with an argument about bodyguards. Jade stood in their walk-in closet choosing a black dress, her fingers moving across a row of designer pieces she still hadn't fully made peace with owning. Soo-hyun leaned in the doorway watching her with the quiet intensity he never bothered to disguise. He was already dressed in a dark charcoal suit that had probably cost more than her first semester of college, his hair pushed back, jaw clean. And even in the simple act of standing still, he managed to look like a man the world rearranged itself around, which, she had come to understand, it often did. "You're doing it again," he said. She glanced at him. "Doing what?" "Choosing the least expensive thing in your closet like you're shopping somewhere else. I like simple things." He crossed to her and put his hands around her waist from behind, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "You are married to one of the wealthiest men in Seoul. Stop dressing like you're apologizing for something." She laughed, the tension dissolving the way it always did when he made her feel ridiculous for being practical. He pressed his lips to her neck, and she let herself lean into it for a moment before pulling away, because if she didn't, neither of them would be on time for anything. "I'm going to Gangnam Mall," she said. "Christmas shopping. I won't be long." Something moved through his eyes. She knew that look, the calculation, the protective instinct activating before he'd finished processing what she'd said. "Take Jin-ho and Seong with you. Soo-hyun, non-negotiable." His voice shifted into the register that meant the conversation was already over. He never raised it. He never had to. "You know what I am. You know the world that comes attached to it. You don't leave this building without protection. That is not something I'm flexible on." She touched his jaw and felt him close his eyes for just a second, like it was a reflex he couldn't help. "Okay," she said. "I'll take them." The tension left his shoulders completely. "Thank you." He checked his watch. "I have a meeting. Home by 7. We have dinner reservations at 8. "Where?" That slow, dangerous smile that had absolutely ruined her from the first time she encountered it. "Wear the burgundy dress. The one I can't stop thinking about." She was still warm from that smile an hour later. Walking through Gangnam Luxury Mall with Jin-ho and Seung at a respectful distance behind her. The mall was everything Seoul did when Seoul was showing off. Marble floors that reflected crystal chandeliers, every brand displayed like a monument, Christmas decorations in gold and white installed by someone with an unlimited budget and a strong personal opinion about elegance. It gleamed, it sparkled, it smelled of expensive perfume and fresh flowers, and the particular confidence of a city at the top of itself. She stepped out of a boutique with 2 small bags, adjusted her glove over her ring, and saw him. Marcus Delaney was leaning against a display case like he owned the floor beneath it. He was laughing at something, turned toward a woman wearing enough designer labels to constitute a full outfit twice over. He looked exactly the same confident posture, the same expensive casualness funded entirely by someone else's money, the same way of standing like the space owed him something. Jade's bags nearly slipped from her fingers. 3 years. She had rebuilt herself across an ocean, and she had told herself, genuinely believed, that she was healed. And standing here now, watching him laugh, without a single visible scar, while she carried a cemetery's worth of grief in her chest, she understood that healed and healing were 2 entirely different conditions. She should have turned around. Every reasonable part of her brain was composing a quiet exit, but her feet were marble. Marcus looked up. Their eyes met, a beat of nothing, the lag of recognition, and then his face moved through shock and landed somewhere uglier. Is something that told her he had never once, in 3 years, thought seriously about what he had done to her. He said something low to the woman beside him and walked over. Jade did not move. "Well," he said, drawing it out slowly like he was tasting it. "Jade, Didn't expect to see you here. He looked her over in that particular way, the kind meant to assign value and come up short on purpose. Looks like you cleaned yourself up. Found someone generous over here? You stole from me, she said. She kept her voice low and hated the shake underneath it, but didn't hide from it. You left me with nothing. His laugh was loud enough to turn heads nearby. Stole. Baby, I made a decision. You were suffocating. You tried to trap me with a pregnancy and I got out before it got worse. I was 4 months pregnant. And I told you from the beginning I did not want children. He stepped closer, dropping his voice into something intended to intimidate. You probably planned the whole thing. The woman he'd been standing with appeared at his side, linking her arm through his with a possessive little look at Jade. Is this her? The one who kept calling you? I never followed anyone, Jade said, and her voice came out steadier than she expected. Don't make a scene, Marcus said, already turning away. You're embarrassing yourself. Same as you always did. You left me homeless. The words came out before she could contain them. I lost our baby because I was starving and alone and... He spun back. His face had gone red in a way that had nothing to do with shame and everything to do with being challenged in public. Don't you dare try to put that on me. Don't you stand here and... Jinho stepped smoothly between them. Sir, step back. Marcus looked at him like he was furniture and shoved his arm aside. The momentum of it caught Jade in the shoulder and sent her stumbling backward into a display stand. She went down hard. The metal edge caught her elbow and Christmas ornaments exploded around her on the marble floor. The sound was sharp and sudden, and the entire wing of the mole went absolutely silent. Jade looked up from the floor. Marcus stood over her. His face was twisted, and he said the words that sealed everything that came after. Stay down where you belong, you... He didn't finish. Jinho had him face down on the marble in under 2 seconds, arm pinned hard behind his back, cheek pressed to the floor. Seung was crouching beside Jade, and his face carrying a very specific kind of pale, not fear for himself, but fear of what was coming. Because Seung knew Kang Soo-hyun, and he knew what happened to people who put their hands on what Soo-hyun loved. Mom, are you hurt? We need to leave now. I'm fine, Jade whispered. She was not fine. Her elbow was bleeding through her sleeve. Her hands were shaking, but worse than either of those things was the feeling of being cracked open again, the old wound splitting wide like it had never closed, all the careful work of 3 years suddenly feeling thin and temporary and very far away. Her phone rang. Soo-hyun. She answered with fingers that wouldn't stay still. Hello? Are you hurt? His voice was the temperature of very deep water. Still. Controlled in the way that meant the opposite of calm. I'm okay. Just a scratch. Jade. The way he said her name in that voice. Don't do that. My elbow. I fell. But it's fine. It's really... Who touched you? It wasn't a question. It was the first step in a decision already being made. My ex. Marcus. Security has him right now. It's already... Put Seung on the phone. She handed the phone over. Watched Seung's expression move from nervous to a shade of pale that didn't come back quickly. He spoke in rapid Korean, listened, nodded several times, and returned the phone without meeting her eyes. Baby, she said softly. 9 minutes. His voice was ice that had been burning for some time. Don't let him leave that mall. If security tries to release him, say my name, use it. Soo-hyun, please, just... He put his hands on you. His voice dropped further. He made you bleed. There is no version of what happens next where that man simply walks away. Do you understand me? The line went dead. Jade looked at Jinho, still holding Marcus to the marble floor. She looked at the girlfriends screaming at security. She looked at the crowd gathered in a wide circle, phones raised, recording everything with the focused attention people give to disasters they're not personally involved in. And she felt something cold and absolute settle in her stomach, like a stone dropped into still water. Marcus Delaney had no idea what he had just started. Mall security had everyone separated by the time Soo-hyun arrived. Jade sat in the security office with a first aid kit, an EMT working on her elbow and Seung standing guard at the door. She could hear Marcus in the adjacent room, voice raised and demanding, and his girlfriend audible at intervals. The ordinary entitlement of it was almost remarkable. Then the door opened. Soo-hyun walked in. He had come directly from his meeting. The suit was still immaculate, but there was nothing civilized operating behind his eyes right now. He crossed the room in 3 strides, and his hands came to her face with a gentleness that was in complete war with everything else about him in that moment. "Let me see you," he said quietly. "It's just a scratch." His gaze moved over her torn sleeve, the bandage on her elbow, the tracks on her cheeks she hadn't realized were there until she saw him see them. When he looked back at her face, something had settled in his expression, something that didn't leave room for negotiation. "Who is he?" he said. "Point him out. Let's just go home, please." "It's not worth it." He repeated it back to her very quietly. "You are bleeding. You have been crying. Someone put their hands on you with violence. My wife. And you want to tell me it's not worth it." He switched to Korean, speaking to Seung in short, precise sentences that sounded less like sentences and more like instructions being filed under different categories. Seung left immediately. "Mr. Kang," the security supervisor approached with the careful energy of a man who wasn't sure what he was walking toward. "We have the full incident on camera. The individual who assaulted your wife is being held. The police have been contacted. Cancel it." Soo-hyun's tone was perfectly conversational. "Sir, we're legally required to—" He pulled out his phone, made one call, spoke briefly in Korean, hung up. 30 seconds later, the supervisor's radio crackled. The man listened. His expression moved from firm to accommodating, in real time. "Of course, Mr. Kang. Yes. The police have been notified? False alarm. My sincerest apologies. This was Seoul. This was Kang Soo-hyun's soul specifically, and there was a meaningful difference between those 2 things. "I want to see him," Soo-hyun said, still looking only at Jade. "Tell me about him first. Why don't I know about an ex-fiancé who can walk into a mall and leave you shaking?" She had told him the outline, the broad version. Difficult relationship, hard times, moved to Korea for a fresh start. She had never given him the architecture, the weight-bearing walls, the parts that still held the damage. She gave them to him now. "His name is Marcus Delaney. We were together 3 years. He engaged for 6 months." She kept her voice even and low. "I worked 2 jobs the entire time. I paid for everything. Rent bills, his car, his clothes, all of it. He was building something," he said. "I believed him. Then I got pregnant." Soo-hyun's jaw tightened. He stayed quiet. "I was so happy." She paused for a moment with that. "I painted the nursery. I bought tiny shoes and put them on the dresser. I thought we were about to become something real." She exhaled. "I came home one day and he was gone. He'd emptied every account. My accounts, my money. Took anything worth selling. Left a note on the kitchen counter calling me a desperate woman who tried to trap him and walked out of my life." His hands were very still in his lap. "I lost the apartment within the week. Lost both jobs not long after that. I lived in my car for 3 weeks in a parking lot in Charlotte trying to stay healthy for the baby." She said it plainly because she had learned that plainly was the only way to say it without falling apart. "Then one morning I woke up and there was blood, and I drove myself to the hospital alone, and I lost the baby in a charity ward with no one there." She looked at him. I was completely alone for that. The quality of the silence that followed was specific and heavy. Soo-hyun pulled her into his arms and held her with an intensity that was almost painful, and she could feel the rage moving through him in slow, controlled waves, not at her, for her. There was a difference and she had always known how to feel it. He let go, stood, buttoned his jacket with the controlled precision of a man putting a version of himself back in place. Show me," he said quietly. She pointed to the door of the room where Marcus was being held. He walked out. She heard Marcus first. "About time someone with real authority showed up. I want to speak to someone in charge. I want this woman arrested. I have witnesses." The voice cut off, then Soo-hyun's voice. too low to make out specific words but unmistakable in everything else. Measured. Absolute, cold in the way that only burns. Then Marcus again, louder now, with a different quality underneath it. Who are you? You can't just walk in here. Jade moved to the window. She watched Soo-hyun lift Marcus Delaney off the floor by his collar with one hand and press him against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster behind him. Marcus's feet left the ground. His face went immediately crimson. My name, Soo-hyun said clearly, loud enough for the room to hear, is Kang Soo-hyun. The woman you just put your hands on is my wife. He let go. Marcus dropped and crumpled, gasping, one hand on his throat. That should have been the end of it, for anyone with functional survival instincts. Marcus, unfortunately, did not have those. I didn't know she was married, he wheezed. I swear I didn't know. If I had known... Married, Soo-hyun's laugh was a cold and quiet thing. You think a legal document is what I'm angry about right now? He looked down at Marcus with something past contempt. No. I'm angry because you destroyed her years before I ever found her. You left her pregnant and without shelter. You stole from her. You caused her to lose a child she wanted desperately. And she grieved that alone in a hospital charity ward because of you. That's not... She's exaggerating. She always... Soo-hyun kicked him in the ribs. The sound carried through the wall. Marcus folded. The girlfriend screamed. The security guards became suddenly interested in the ceiling. Let me explain something to you slowly. Soo-hyun crouched, bringing himself to Marcus's level. I own this city in ways that would not make sense to someone like you. I have relationships with people who have relationships with other people going back 15 years. I have men who would do anything I ask without requiring a reason, and that woman in the other room is the only thing in this world I value above my own survival. He took Marcus by the hair and tilted his face up. So when you shoved her, when you stood over her on that floor and told her to stay down, you didn't just assault a woman in a shopping mall. You put your hands on something I have built my entire life around protecting. Do you understand the distinction? He stood. One of his men appeared with a tablet. Marcus Delaney, the man read. Age 31. Current position at Wellington Delaney Capital, co-founded with his father Robert Delaney. Annual salary approximately $260,000. Personal savings close to $900,000. Recently engaged to Brianna Holt, daughter of Holt Development Group CEO. Soo-hyun looked down at Marcus with something that might have been almost pleasant, if it hadn't been so dangerous. Does your father know his business partner's son has been running financial schemes on vulnerable women for the better part of a decade? Marcus's face went the color of paper. Please, please don't. I will pay her back. I will apologize publicly. I will do whatever. Does your fiancé know about Jade? About the pregnancy? About the baby? Please. By tomorrow morning, Soo-hyun said, with the calm of someone reading from a grocery list, your father will have received documentation of every dollar you took from her. Your fiancé will receive a complete timeline of your relationship with Jade, including the medical records from her hospital visit. We have also located 3 other women you ran similar situations on. Their documentation is already being prepared. Marcus was shaking now. You'll ruin everything. Everything I've built. She lost a baby alone in a charity ward, Soo-hyun said. She slept in a parking lot for 3 weeks. She rebuilt herself from the ground up across an ocean while you moved on to your next target without a single day of consequence. He leaned down one final time. So yes, Marcus, I am going to take it all. Your position, your money, your engagement, your access to your father's business, your reputation. Every single thing. And every time you feel helpless, every time you feel desperate and worthless and like you have nothing left, I want you to remember the woman you kicked in this mall today and understand exactly where the decision was made. He walked out and did not look back once. When he returned to Jade, the hardness left his face like a switch. He became someone else entirely, in the space of a single step through the door. He became hers. Are you ready to go home? He asked softly. She thought briefly about saying something about proportionality. about enough being enough. But then she thought about the yellow nursery and the tiny shoes and the charity ward and the parking lot. "Yeah," she said, "take me home." He picked her up, not metaphorically. He actually picked her up and carried her out through the mall with her head against his shoulder and 6 of his men forming a perimeter. And the crowd that had been recording the entire confrontation recorded this too. She let him carry her and didn't argue and didn't feel embarrassed about it, because sometimes being carried is the right thing to allow. Behind them, Marcus Delaney's world had already started to come apart. The ride back was quiet in the way that felt like recovery rather than absence. Soo-hyun kept her hand in both of his for the entire drive, his thumb moving in slow circles against her palm, his jaw still carrying the residue of the afternoon in its set. Christmas lights blurred past the tinted windows in streams of gold and red. Seoul in December had a specific kind of beauty, cold and glittering and completely indifferent to whatever personal disasters were unfolding inside its borders. He took her home and dismissed the staff and drew her a bath without being asked. He sat on the edge of the tub while she soaked and washed her hair with both hands, slow and careful, not talking. He cleaned the scrape on her elbow afterward with the focused attention he gave to things that mattered to him, pressed his lips to the inside of her wrist. "I should have told you everything sooner," she said. He shook his head once. "Don't. I kept the worst of it from you because I didn't want you looking at me differently." He tilted her face toward his. "I look at you the way I have always looked at you, like you are the most extraordinary thing I have ever encountered." He paused. "Trauma doesn't expire because we want it to. Pain doesn't follow a schedule. You survived something that would have ended most people and you rebuilt something beautiful. You don't have to carry any of it alone anymore. That is all I need you to understand." The tears that came were quieter than she expected. He held her until they stopped. They ended up on the balcony later with the Seoul skyline spread below them. Fried chicken and tteokbokki from a place in Itaewon between them, a bottle of wine open, Christmas lights visible in the buildings across the city. And Jade had wrapped herself in the largest robe in the apartment and was only about 60% present in her own body, which felt like progress from where she'd been 2 hours ago. "What happens to Marcus now?" she asked. Soo-hyun set down his glass. "By tomorrow morning his fiancée will have received everything. By noon his father will have begun separating him from the business. By tomorrow evening the personal accounts will be frozen pending fraud investigation." He placed the best piece of chicken on her plate the way he always did, without asking, without making it a production. "Every cent he took from you, plus 8 years of interest, plus compensation for what doesn't have a clean number. You'll see it deposited by Friday." Jade was quiet for a moment. "You did all of that in a matter of hours. I made some calls." He said it the way people say something is simple when it is actually enormous. His expression shifted into something more serious. "I also found the other 3 women. They'll all receive full restitution." She looked at him across the table. The man the world feared. The underground king who controlled more of Seoul than most people understood. The man who could redirect a police response with a single phone call and make a supervisor's entire professional framework change shape in 30 seconds. And he was sitting here with tteokbokki and a glass of wine, putting the best pieces of food on her plate. "Do you ever worry about it?" she asked. "What you are? What this costs?" He considered this honestly, which was one of the things she loved most about him. He never deflected the real questions. "I made peace with what I am a long time ago." He met her eyes. "But I worried for a while that someone like you could not truly love someone like me. That eventually the weight of this world would be too much, and you would leave. And now I know better." He reached across the table for her hand. "You love me despite what I am, not because of it. That is the only kind of love that means anything." She moved from her chair to his lap, the way she often did, and put her arms around his neck. "You bring me coffee every morning before you check your phone," she said. "You learned my grandmother's cornbread recipe from a video because I mentioned missing it once. You hold me when the nightmares come, and you never ask me to explain them. You are not what the world thinks you are. Not entirely." Had he buried his face in her neck, and exhaled in the way he only did when he had fully let his guard down. Really let it down, not just the version he showed other people. "I don't deserve you," he said. "We deserve each other," she answered. Two people who came through the worst and decided to choose something better. That's why this works. We understand each other's damage. He kissed her in the candlelight on the balcony with Seoul glittering below them, and whatever remained of the day dissolved completely. The internet found them at 7 the next morning. Jade's phone had been going off long enough that the buzz had become a kind of continuous hum by the time she surfaced from sleep. Soo-hyun was already on the balcony on a call, voice low and controlled. She grabbed her phone and opened it. The top trending topic in Seoul was the Gangnam Mall incident. Security footage was everywhere. All of it. Marcus approaching her, the confrontation building, the shove, the fall, Marcus standing over her on the marble floor. And then Jin-ho taking him down and Soo-hyun walking in and carrying Jade out through a silent crowd. The video had passed 20 million views. Below the footage, someone had constructed a full thread, bank records showing every transfer Marcus had made from Jade's accounts over 3 years. Medical documentation, testimonies from 2 of the other women with names protected. His engagement announcement sitting beside time-stamped evidence he was still running his scheme on Jade at the time he'd gotten engaged. The comments were not gentle. She has a mafia husband, and her ex still tried it. The audacity deserves its own zip code. The way he picked her up and walked out like she was the most important thing in that building. Because she was. I have watched the part where he says her name to the security supervisor 14 times, and I need to sit down. Marcus saw a woman alone and thought she was unprotected. Sir, she was the most protected woman in Seoul. Soo-hyun's identity was out too. His name, photographs of them at various events over the past year, their marriage certificate, articles about his business empire, and his reach across the city. He came in from the balcony as she was scrolling. His expression was unreadable in the way it got when he was assessing something. "You've seen it? The whole world has seen it?" He sat beside her. "Are you okay?" "I don't know yet." She kept scrolling. "Everyone knows everything. About Marcus, about the baby, about all of it, and they're responding to it." He showed her his own phone. "Look at how they're responding." The support was overwhelming, and it wasn't gentle support. It was the fierce, protective kind that rises up when people recognize something unjust and decide collectively they are not going to be quiet about it. Women sharing their own versions of Marcus. The comments about Soo-hyun running the full range from admiration to a very specific type of comedic adoration that felt distinctly Black American in its energy, and Jade almost laughed reading them. A message from her friend Deja in Atlanta. "Girl, I am at my desk at work watching a man in a suit carry you out of a mall like you are made of actual gold, and I have never been so emotional about someone else's life." "When did you get married? To whom?" And Jade put the phone face down. Soo-hyun's rang. He glanced at the screen and something cold and satisfied moved across his face. He answered, listened briefly, then switched to English. "Mr. Delaney Sr. "Yes. Thank you for calling." He put it on speaker. A man's voice, tight and clipped with the particular fury of someone unaccustomed to being in this position. "Mr. Kang, I'm calling regarding my son. I believe we can resolve this like businessmen." "Your son has a pattern of behavior," Soo-hyun said pleasantly. "This is not a resolvable misunderstanding. What do you want? Name your price. You want to buy this. Everyone has a price." The voice was confident in the way privilege makes people confident about things they should not be confident about. "Let me explain something about my world," Soo-hyun said. And the pleasantness was entirely gone. "Your son stole from a vulnerable woman, left her homeless and pregnant, caused her to lose a child from malnutrition and stress, and physically assaulted her in a public space yesterday. These are not errors in judgment. They are a pattern of behavior enabled by a father who ensured there were never any consequences." He paused. "Here is what will happen. Marcus will issue a full public apology. To my wife specifically, and to every woman he has done this to. He will enter therapy and complete it. He will pay full restitution to all victims with interest, and he will never come within 500 meters of my wife again. If he does, I will interpret that as aggression and respond to it as such, silence on the other end. If he does all of this, Soo-hyun continued, I may, and I have not decided yet, allow him to eventually rebuild something. If you prefer the legal route, I have documentation sufficient to ensure your son sees a courtroom for fraud, theft, and assault. The decision is yours. You have 60 seconds. The silence stretched. Then quietly and completely, he'll comply. Soo-hyun ended the call without a goodbye and set the phone on the table with the careful placement of someone who has just finished something. Jade looked at him across the table. You're enjoying this? He picked up his coffee. Possibly. I think I am too, she said. And she laughed. Really laughed. And he laughed with her. And she felt something releasing from a place that had been holding tension for 3 years without her full awareness. The days that followed moved with the precision of something engineered. Brianna Holt ended the engagement publicly with a post that got shared 40,000 times. In under 2 hours, Wellington Delaney Capital released a carefully worded statement announcing Marcus's departure that didn't hide what it was beneath the corporate language. 2 major outlets ran investigative features on his history with women. A third woman came forward on her own. On the 4th day, Marcus appeared on camera looking like a man who had not slept or eaten since the mall. He read from a prepared statement in full. I am here to offer a sincere and public apology to Jade Carter Kang for the harm I caused her. I stole from her. I abandoned her when she needed support most. I caused her to lose a pregnancy she desperately wanted, and she went through that loss completely alone because of my cowardice and selfishness. I have no excuse to offer. I also apologize to the other women I hurt through the same pattern of behavior. I am entering therapy to address the causes of these actions, and I accept the full weight of what has come as a result. He looked directly into the camera for the final part, and Jade knew Soo-hyun had written it specifically, to Mr. Kang. I understand now the full weight of what my actions cost. I accept that this outcome is a direct consequence of what I chose to do. I am sorry for hurting your wife. Jade turned the video off, sat quietly for a moment. How do you feel? Soo-hyun asked. Like I've been carrying a stone for 3 years, she said, and I just put it down. He pulled her close without another word, and she let herself be held with the ease of someone who has finally stopped fighting the thing that is good for them. 2 weeks before Christmas, Soo-hyun took her to a private restaurant in Gangnam he owned. He had reserved the entire space for just the 2 of them. White roses and purple orchids on every table, candles in amber clusters, her favorite music already playing when they walked through the door. He had been building her playlists for months, mixing her American favorites with Korean artists he loved, and the result sounded exactly like what they were to each other. What is all of this? She asked. You, he said simply, pulling out her chair. This is a celebration of you. They ate and talked and laughed with the ease of 2 people who had stopped performing and were simply being present in each other's company. After dessert, he stood and extended his hand. She took it. They swayed together between the tables in the candlelight, while the music moved around them, no occasion and no choreography, just his arms around her waist and her head against his chest. She thought about the distance between who she had been and who she was now, and how neither version of her had been wrong. The girl in the parking lot had made the decision that made the woman at this table possible, and that felt like something worth honoring. I love you, she said against his shoulder. He held her closer. I love you more than I knew how to love anything before you, he said, which is the truest thing I know. On Christmas morning, a notification appeared on her phone before she was fully awake. She stared at the number on her screen. $127,000 deposited. Every cent Marcus had taken, but with 8 years of interest. plus additional compensation. A note from Soo Hyun's financial team kept it simple. Full restitution with interest, as agreed. She sat with it for a long time. She thought about the girl in the parking lot, about $17 and crackers from a gas station and a parking lot in Charlotte that had become, for 3 weeks, the whole world. That girl had made a decision that she was going to survive with no evidence that she would, with nothing but the decision itself. That decision had led here. Soo Hyun came in with coffee the way he always did, phone not yet touched. "I want to start a foundation," she said. He sat beside her and listened without interrupting, which was one of the things she loved most about him. "For women who've been financially exploited by partners," she said. "Housing, job training, therapy, childcare resources. Everything I didn't have. Everything I had to figure out alone because nothing like it existed for me." She looked at him. "I know how to rebuild from nothing because I had no choice. These women should have a choice." He was quiet for the kind of moment that meant he was genuinely moved and managing it. "Then, I will match whatever you contribute. And there is a building in Itaewon that has been sitting empty for 2 years, 3 floors, fully renovated. It's yours if you want it. Soo Hyun, I want this." He put his hand over hers, and she felt the complete sincerity of it. You want to turn the worst thing that was ever done to you into something that helps other people rise. That is the most powerful thing I have ever heard anyone say out loud. Let me be part of it. We'll call it second chances, she said, because everybody deserves one. He smiled. Not the dangerous one, not the cold one, the real one, the one that lived underneath all the others. That, he said, is exactly right. 3 months later, Jade stood at the ribbon cutting outside a building in Itaewon on a bright, cold morning with her husband beside her and a small crowd of people who had helped build the thing into existence. She spoke without notes. "I built this because I lived it," she said into the microphone. "I know what it feels like to lose everything because someone you trusted decided you weren't worth staying for. I know the shame of it, the silence of it. The way you convince yourself you must have done something to deserve it. But I also know that with the right support, the right resources, and one person who looks at you and says you can come back from this, you can. The women who come through these doors will not have to figure it out alone. We will be here for every single step." The first resident moved in that afternoon. Her name was Simone. She had 2 small children and 1 bag of clothes, and the careful composure that Jade recognized from the inside, the kind you wear when you are trying not to fall apart in front of anyone. Jade helped her unpack and sat on the edge of the small, furnished bed, while Simone tried not to cry, and then went ahead and cried anyway. "You really came all the way back from what happened to you," Simone said. "I did," Jade told her, "and you will too. I promise you that with everything I have." That evening, she came home to Soo Hyun in their kitchen, actually cooking. He had been taking Korean cooking lessons for 3 months to surprise her and was genuinely improving. The apartment smelled like the Galbi gym he'd been working on all day. The table was set. He looked up when she came in with the expression he reserved for when she walked through the door, the one that made her feel like the room had been waiting for her specifically. "How was the first day?" he asked. "Perfect," she said, sitting and accepting the bowl he placed in front of her. "Overwhelming and perfect. We already have 15 applications for next month. We'll expand." He sat across from her. "Whatever the foundation needs, another building, more staff, more resources, it gets it. This is important work, Jade. You are changing the shape of something for a lot of women." She reached across the table for his hand. "Have I told you today that you're incredible?" "This morning," he said, "but I never get tired of hearing it." They ate and talked about the foundation's future, about the women they would help, about the life they were building together. Later, close to midnight, Jade's phone buzzed with an email from an address she didn't recognize. She almost deleted it. Something made her open it instead. It was from Marcus. "Jade, I know I have no right. I saw the coverage about your foundation, and I wanted to say that I'm proud of what you built from what I did to you. You took the worst thing I ever chose to do and turned it into something that genuinely helps people. That's who you always were. Someone who could find light in the darkest place. I was too selfish to see it back then. I'm in therapy now. I'm actually trying. I don't expect forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that you deserved better than anything I ever gave you. And I'm glad you found it. She put the phone down and was quiet for a moment. What is it? Soo-hyun asked, noticing the change in her face. Marcus emailed me. He went still. She read it to him. When she finished, the room held its quiet. How do you feel? He asked carefully. She thought about it honestly. 3 months ago, seeing Marcus's name on a screen would have sent something cold through her whole body. Now she read his words and felt nothing. No anger left to burn, no pain to protect, no satisfaction even. Just an emptiness where something heavy used to live. Free, she said. Like that chapter is actually finally closed. She deleted the email, set the phone down, looked at Soo-hyun across the space between them. He opened his arms without a word, and she crossed the room and walked into them, and he held her with the settled certainty of something that was going nowhere. Ever. I love you, he said into her hair. I love you, she said against his shoulder. My protector, my partner, my home. Outside, the Seoul skyline glittered in the cold and the dark, indifferent and beautiful, and full of the particular energy of a city that had seen everything and kept moving anyway. Inside their penthouse, 2 people who had been broken in very different ways held on to each other with the ease of people who had stopped being afraid of losing what they had. Because they understood now that this was not the fragile kind of love. This was the kind built from ruins, solid and strange. And absolutely, permanently theirs. Marcus Delaney had stood over her on a marble floor in the most expensive mall in Seoul and told her to stay down where she belonged. He had never been more wrong about anything in his entire life. Jade Carter had been broken. She had been abandoned and robbed and left to grieve in a parking lot with nothing but a decision. She had carried that decision across an ocean and rebuilt herself from the ground up and fallen into a love she had not seen coming. And she had turned everything Marcus had taken from her into a foundation that would change the trajectory of other women's lives for years to come. He had tried to write her ending in that Charlotte parking lot. He didn't get to do that. She got to do that. And this, the foundation, the penthouse, the man whose arms were around her right now, the life that kept growing larger and more extraordinary every single day, this was her ending. Or rather, it was her beginning. Because this is what second chances look like when you are brave enough to believe you deserve one. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, I want you to know that means everything to this channel. Please hit that like button right now, subscribe to City of Afro-Korean Tales if you haven't already, and turn on your notifications so you never miss a new story. Drop a comment and tell me. Which moment hit the hardest for you? Was it the mole, the foundation, or that final scene between Jade and Soo-hyun? And tell me what you want next. More mafia romance? A slow burn? A forbidden love that costs everything? Let me know in the comments and I will see you in the next video.